Hello, and welcome to the Realm of Ideas is Free to All. This is episode 77, Iconic and Idiosyncratic. Unfortunately for us, this week Julie is again at the opera and it's the end of the season, so she wants to kind of see as many beautiful things as she can before the season ends. So as a result, as a substitute for tonight, we have Pangwell, our international correspondent, and as a result, Pangwell will be kind of substituting for Julie tonight. And I think you can see her. She's kind of like, going to do her best. But I mean, we know that she's very capable. Anyway, so here we are. It's the preview for our Sunday show series of kind of like, yeah, we are. Yeah, we are. Now she's kind of more in the frame. So, if you see Penguil out in the street, come up to her, introduce yourself, tell her who you are. Hi, Penguil. There's another one. Yep. Hi back. Is that Peely? Hi, Peely. Hi, Peely. Okay. So basically, when you see Penguil out in the street, say hello. Tell her how you're doing, give her an insight into what is important, and we'll go from there. All right. So the topic that we'll be speaking about on Sunday is something that's actually kind of interesting. We've done a lot of comparison, and I don't think it's important that we kind of think of these things as oppositions. I don't believe things exist in opposition. I think that's something that basically kind of is something that maybe can happen axiomatically, maybe in mathematics, but I don't believe it exists in the natural world. I think there are things that are in opposition. I think there are things that have comparative natures, but I don't believe that there actually is an opposition. So don't think it's like iconic versus, or these two things are kind of polar opposites that basically have, a kind of struggle for superiority. Basically, what I see is the fact that there's iconic and idiosyncratic, and sometimes they get confused as to being somehow synonymous or somehow related. And I think that's kind of something that, at least in my case, I would like to say I'm not really sure I think is a positive thing. So I think there's a couple of things that I think allow me to kind of, kind of put the differences. I think there are other things that I would say another comparison in that relationship would be compelling as opposed to provocative, and understanding as a result, and as opposed to judgment. I think both iconic things and idiosyncratic things have a tendency to gain a tremendous amount of attention, and they kind of force us to look at them with a certain seriousness. I think in the most case, the iconic is worthy of veneration and therefore is kind of worthy of kind of being understood. And usually what it does is make a compelling argument for its existence. On the other hand, I feel that the idiosyncratic thing often is usually just provocative and basically is something that kind of comes from an emotional judgment and usually upon investigation falls apart. So that's kind of the essence of how I would kind of compare these two things. Now, what we'll do is kind of go into kind of examples of that. In fact, I was having a conversation with Mr. Spock, and we were talking about that in relationship to Elliot and romanticism as a result of a kind of talk about. In fact, it's in the comments from our last. It's in the comments from our last show, and we talked about how the fact that today I was watching a new program that I kind of found called Pens and Poison, which is actually a very interesting channel. And this individual is someone I don't know. So I only saw this program and was interested to hear about her dissatisfaction with her institutional activities and how she found herself kind of needing to kind of free herself and go off on her own. And I think it kind of says something about the relationship of that. I feel that people unable to generate consequence, the desire is to destruct the current, the the connection to this vast legacy of consequence. So by doing that, they do two things that happen. First is the subtle loss of the understanding of things of consequence. And again, that's just their selfish desire to kind of put something less meaningful in the place of something more meaningful. But to me, what happens is those essential abilities of individuals to kind of come forth and give rise to ideas that will become those things that create the new eras. These are the things that basically become kept within the institutions, and the institutions are usually very bad at kind of like innovating because they're really kind of too narrow in their perspective. And this individual was speaking about that in terms of this relationship to literature, which is a mess. And I think that, I'm finding more and more of these dissatisfied people who feel unchallenged, uninterested in the problems that are being posed to them, unconcerned with the consequence of things that are basically just kind of like silly and idiosyncratic. So, but I think what happens is schools have to change more than universities have to. Oh, that's interesting. So how would you talk about the difference between the schools and the universities? I mean, my background in education is from a technical institute, and as a result, it's not really a humanities school. But again, going to school in a place like New York City, the entire city becomes a humanities school. So I mean, I live in a city that has the New York City Opera. It has like the symphony. It has it has the Metropolitan Museum, the Museum of Natural History. Okay, the learning system in school is made for a certain kind of student, not really for everyone. That's possible. That's not a bad idea. But I think what happens is, what I think happens when a new age emerges, it emerges because individuals vastly separated over time and space come to similar conclusions. I mean, I always found a great example of that was the fact that like both, Newton and Leibniz came to understand the desire and the need for calculus and invented, everyone said, how could you invent calculus by two different people at different times? It was because of the desire for this existence of that understanding of tracking of motion to be needed to be understood at this time. So in fact, both these individuals came apart where they needed to kind of create these formulations in order to speculate on the things that were going to be happening in the natural world. So I think in that regard, it was important that individuals would kind of start to kind of correlate their overlap of these kind of discoveries or these reveals that kind of came apart in these different times. So I think seeing this dissatisfaction, and I don't know, I have so many people are kind of coming to me and kind of saying like, hey, yeah, I totally know what you talk about when you talk about the kind of like, the dissatisfaction that you have. And I think maybe it's the natural thing that happens at this point in a time, or we could go into the pathologies of why these things happen. I kind of gone into a little bit of the pathology within the architectural uh universe, but to me it's really not that important. It just seems as if these individuals who basically have a responsibility to kind of protect the legacy basically start to lose their effectiveness. And maybe it's because at a certain point, the effectiveness of those principles that are laid down are no longer of any merit, or they've kind of they've lost their consequence to the point where their need for new. And I guess maybe they have a position where they can start to see that. But again, these people were there to kind of be caretakers, not inventors. So it's very rare that you kind of see someone who within the institution or within some kind of lineage is capable of kind of like allowing the institution to kind of like not to escape its inertial bias. So anyway, that's kind of where we stand, and so that'll be our program, for Sunday. I mean, I'm here all alone. Well, not all alone. I have Penguin, and I have Peely, but I have more important. I have my green and white tea, and I think that that's pretty much where we are for now. Be interested to get Julie's perspective, and again, having put this out and already had an exchange with Peely, I think that this is an interesting topic. It's like the idea of what I guess Nietzsche would call the hollow man, and that person who actually deserves veneration. So with that said, let's kind of close up for now. The realm of ideas is free to all, and it's to the benefit of us all to kind of keep it just that way. And as Julie would say, in this case, we would hear it from Pangle, precisely.